back to this episode of Numerical Concepts, Mathematics. My name is Numerical, once again a mathematics teacher. I hope you enjoyed the last episode, and still continuing with the numerical concept. This time around we are going to look at fractions. Fractions are also under numbers. Remember we said under numerical concept we look at basically numbers. The last episode we talked about numbers, different types of numbers. You remember we talked about the whole numbers, natural numbers, we talked about the prime numbers, triangular numbers, square numbers, cube numbers. There are very many. We actually explained and listed each one of the types of numbers. So still under numbers, we have the numbers that are fractions. And what is a fraction? To start with, a fraction is simply a part of something. For example, a bit that is broken from a whole. So fractions, by definition, this is a part of something. Or we can say it is a bit that is broken from a whole. Two definitions. For example, if you have your piece of cake and then you divide the cake into three parts to three different people. At least everyone has taken a fraction. For example, if this is my cake, we are three people, each one will take a portion, meaning that there are three parts. My parts, I will take 1 out of 3 because there are 1, 2, 3. I'm taking a third, 1 out of 3. The cake was a whole is always 1. And in fractions, we call it 1 out of 1. So a fraction, it is simply, if I am to take a piece, I will shade this part. And out of a whole, I've taken one part. So I call it 1 out of how many? 1, 2, 3. That is a third. A third is a fraction. It is a part of something. This time it was a cake. So under fractions, we also have the types of fractions. Fractions also have types, and under my types, I have the first, which is equivalent. We have equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions are actually more of same or equal fractions. They are equal or same fractions. We can have an example of, if I have 2 out of 4. 2 out of 4 is the same as if I divide my 2 out of 4 to its lowest one term, I will have by 2 ones, by 2, 2. Is the same as 1 out of 2. So the two fractions, 2 out of 4 and then a half, are called equivalent fractions because they are the same or they are equal. This is the first type, which is equivalent fractions. I have my other type. We have all heard of the proper fractions. The proper fractions are these fractions whereby, number one, we have, if I take an example of 2 out of 4, we have the upper or the top number is called the numerator. And then the lower number below is called the denominator. So under proper fractions, number one, the numerator is smaller than the denominator. The numerator is smaller than the denominator. Like this example, we have 2 out of 4. 2 is smaller than 4. And in most cases, the proper fractions are less than 1. Many of the fractions that are under proper are always smaller than 1. And so the numerator is smaller than the denominator. We have examples like, more examples. We can have, let's say, 3 out of 5. 8 out of 9, we have, let's say, 1 out of 2, and so on. All these examples are under proper fractions because the numerator is smaller than the denominator. My other type is improper. We have improper fractions. And unlike the proper fractions, this time around, the numerator is bigger than the denominator. The numerator is bigger than the denominator. We said the upper number or the top number is the numerator and the lower number is the denominator. In this case, we have examples like 7/3. This is an improper fraction. The numerator is bigger than the denominator. We have numbers like 9/3, 6/2. There are very many numbers, but so long as the numerator is greater or bigger than the denominator, then that is called an improper fraction. We have other types like the mixed fractions. Of course, mixed fractions in most cases are gotten from the improper fraction. If I have, for example, 7/3, to get the mixed fraction, we simply divide. Here we divide the numerator by the denominator to get the mixed fraction. If I have 7 divided by 3, of course by 3 I have 1. By 3 this is 2, remainder 1. My mixed fraction in this case will be 2 whole number, 1/3. So those are the mixed fractions. The types are, we have equivalent fractions, proper fractions, improper fractions, and then we also have the mixed fractions. Even the mixed fraction can be put back into an improper fraction. If we are to change the mixed fraction to an improper fraction, if I had the same example, 2 whole number and 1/3, we simply say divide the denominator, multiply the denominator by the whole number. The procedure is very simple. We multiply the denominator by the whole number, and add the numerator. That is, if we are changing from the mixed fraction to the improper fraction. We simply have my numerator is 1, my denominator is 3. We are saying that we get 3 times the whole number, which is 2, and then we add 1. This gives us 6 plus 1. But then after multiplying the denominator and the whole number, then adding 1, we divide by the denominator. My denominator is 3. So my final will be 6 plus 1, which is 7. Then divide by the denominator, which is 3. I have changed the mixed fraction to an improper fraction. So far, those are the types of fractions. We can move now move to working with fractions. Simple working with fractions, and then we see the examples. Under working with fractions, we have addition, we have subtraction, we have multiplication, and so on. So to start with the working with fractions, like I said, we have addition. Under addition, we can have, let's say, a half. You add 2 out of 4. I have my 2 fractions, a half and then plus 2 out of 4. we simply say when we are adding number 1, we have to make sure that the denominators are the same. And how do we make them the same? We look for the LCM, that is the lowest common multiples of the two denominators. To have a small side work, I have my 2 and then my 4. We are trying to look for the lowest common multiple of 2 and 4. To start with, I have a 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And then 4 divided by 2, I have a 2. Then I also still continue dividing by 2. 1 by 2, I remain with 1. And then 2 by 2, 1. The answer I am getting is simply 2 times 2, which is giving me 4. Meaning that my LCM here is 4. I have my 4. So to add, I get this 4 divided by 2. 4 divided by 2, I get 2. And then 2 times the numerator, which is 1. That is for my first case. The same thing, I get 4 divided by 4, which is 1. 1 times the numerator, which is times 2. My answer is now 2, because 2 times 1 is 2. And then plus 1 times 2 is also 2. I have 2 plus 2 over 4. This gives me 4 out of 4. My answer is 1, because by 4 is 1 and by 4 is 1. In addition, what matters is looking for the LCM to get a common denominator. Multiply the common denominator into this other by 4. 4 divided by 2, I got my 2 times 1. 4 by 4, I got my 1 times 2. And then we add. I come up with the final answer. Then when we come to subtraction, we can have examples like a half minus a quarter. The same procedure for addition. We simply also get the LCM. Like we saw, we have 2 and 4. The LCM for these two is 4. My LCM will be 4. 4 divided by 2, I get 2 times 1. I have 2 times 1. 4 by 4, I got 1 times 1. So 2 times 1 is 2. Minus 1, then over. 2 minus 1, I am getting 1 out of 4. Meaning that a half minus a quarter, we get a quarter. So the procedures for addition and subtraction are almost the same. Only that we maintain the addition, the mathematical symbols. Here we had addition, that's why I have addition. And here we have subtraction, that's why I am subtracting. So working with the fractions, so far we have addition and subtraction. We have also multiplication. How do you multiply fractions? I have a simple example like a half times a quarter. To multiply the fractions, here we multiply the numerators alone and multiply the denominators alone. I'll simply get 1 times 1. Then I divide by 2 times 4. This answer here I get 1 out of 8 as my answer. Simply multiply the numerators alone and then the denominators alone. And then lastly, we can look at division. Division of fractions, which is also simpler. We have division of fractions. I have an example like, still a very simple example, like a half divided by a quarter. So for the case of division, I'll have a half. But then I change my division sign into a multiplication sign. My division sign now becomes a multiplication sign. But when I change the sign, I have to make what we call a reciprocal. For example, if I have 2 out of 3, the reciprocal of 2 out of 3 is simply 3 out of 2. I interchange the numbers. The numerator becomes the denominator. The denominator becomes the numerator. So when I am dividing, I number one change the division sign to multiplication sign, and I make the reciprocal. I had 1 out of 4. The reciprocal is interchanging, and I'll have 4 out of 1. This gives me 1, like we say, multiplication. Multiply the numerators alone and the denominators alone. I have 1 times 4 divided by 2 times 1. This is 4 out of 2. Of course, by 2, 1, by 2, 2, and my answer is 2. That is division of fractions. Like we have addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Then what about if we need numbers that are combined? In one number we have addition, we have subtraction, we have all of them in one number. We have to still follow the procedures. So we have more examples. This time round, heavy examples. I have number 1. We can have 1 minus a quarter of 2 out of 5 plus 1 out of 6. That is so far my numerator. Then I have 7 out of 12 divided by real number 1 out of 2 minus that. So we have reached at numbers that are a bit more heavy, whereby we are looking at different types of fractions. Like this one, we say it's a mixed fraction. This is a proper fraction. So it is a mixture. We have subtraction, we have multiplication, we have division, we have addition, all in one number. So what do? Here we have to first we have solution. I have to first of all, I can decide to introduce brackets. 1 in fractions is the same as 1 over 1, because 1 over 1 I still get 1. Then minus, I have 1 and a quarter of 2 out of 5, then plus a fix. And then I have 7 out of 12, we divide by the real number and minus that. I can first decide to work with this side alone. Decide to start with the brackets. We have the numerator and then the denominator. I can choose to start with the numerator. Work with the numerator. My numerator is 1 whole number and a quarter, then of 2 out of 5, then plus 1 out of 6. Remember, this is a mixed fraction. We say, how do you change the mixed fraction to an improper fraction? Number 1, multiply the denominator with the whole number and then add the numerator. I'm simply going to have 4 times 1, which is 4, plus 1, which is 5. This time I will have 5 out of 4. Then in multiplication, of means multiplication. I can change the of to multiplication. Then I have 2 out of 5 and then plus 1 out of 6. They are all fractions, but I have multiplication and I have addition. So what do I start with? We have our common term, which is BODMAS. BODMAS simply means brackets of division, multiplication, addition, and subtraction. So in this case, I have multiplication and addition, meaning that there's no way I can add before I multiply. Multiplication comes before addition. So I will have 5 over 4, of course, times 2 out of 5 as my first category to work with, and then plus 1 out of 6. To start with division, by 2 I have 1, by 2 I have 2. I have by 5 1, by 5 1. Still in multiplication, numerators alone. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 1 is 2. So the product I have from the bracket is a half. Then plus a 6. There were 3 fractions, I've reduced them to 2. After reducing them, we say in addition, you look for the LCM. LCM of 2 and 6. We have side work. I have a 2, I have a 6. By 2, 1, 3. By 3, 1, 3. My LCM will be 2 times 3, which is 6. So the LCM of 2 and 6 is simply 6. Then we say, you get the denominator, divide by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then 3 times 1. I will have 3 times 1. Then plus, I have 6 divided by 6, 1. 1 times 1. 3 times 1, I have 3 plus 1 out of 6. This is the same as 4 out of 6. If you want, you can reduce to the lowest term. We say by 2, this is the same as 2 out of 3. So the numerator itself is equal to 2 out of 3. And then, like I have worked with the numerator, I also break my fraction and find out how big is the denominator. My denominator is 7 out of 12 minus 3 whole number and a half minus a third. We're supposed to change the mixed fraction to the proper fraction. This will be 7 out of 12 minus, we say we get 2 times 3, which is 6, minus, this is division. 3 times 2, 6 plus 1. I get 7 out of 2. Then minus a third. A third. And still we have body mass. I have division and subtraction. Should I first subtract or first divide? We have division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. Meaning that I have to first divide. So it is 7 out of 12. We say the division can be now multiplication, but then we make the reciprocal. This will be 2 out of 7. Then, as by first brackets, minus a third. By 2 I have 1. By 2 I have 6. So my denominator, we have 1 out of 6 minus 1 out of 3. You remember the procedures. Number 1, look for the LCM. The LCM of 3 and 6 is simply 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 1 times 1 is what I have. Then minus 3 by 6 by 3 is 2. I have 2 times 1. In this case, I have 1 minus 2 out of 6. Out of 6. 1 minus 2 is the same as negative 1 out of 6. That is my answer for the denominator. I had my fraction as a whole, and then simply, for simplicity, I chose to start with the numerator alone, and the numerator alone gave me 2 out of 3. Then I also followed with the denominator alone, which has given me negative 1 out of 6. So when I come back to my fraction, we say it is the same as 1 out of 1. Then minus. This time round, the numerator is 2 out of 3. And the denominator is negative 1 out of 6. So this is the same as 1 out of 1 minus 2 over 3 divided by negative 1 out of 6. And of course, these can also be in brackets. To deal with the brackets alone, if you remember my body mass once again, I have subtraction, but then I have division. I have to start with division. I will have 1 out of 1 minus. I have 2 out of 3. With the division, we introduce a multiplication and make the reciprocal. My reciprocal will be 6 over negative 1. So we have by 3, 1 by 3 is 2. So this gives me 1 out of 1 minus, this is 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4 out of negative 1. This implies that 1 out of 1 is 1. What about the minus? What about 4 divided by negative 1? You remember, if I have a positive over a negative, my answer has to be a negative. So I have 1, then minus, which is in the question. But then my 4 is also under negative 1. Then I will have minus 4. It's giving me 1 minus minus 4. And of course, if I have a minus and a minus, these all become into a positive. A minus and a minus gives me a positive. So my final answer will simply be 1 plus 4, which is 5, as my final answer. So we can mix fractions that are combined. In a fraction, we have a minus, we have a multiplication, we have a division, we have a subtraction, very many of them. But then you look for the simple way of getting the answer easily. Me, I decided to work with the numerator alone, and then the denominator alone. Then I combine later. We can have more examples, but then let me leave you with this one. So we can have another number, let me call it a trial question. A trial question for you. We have 5 whole number, 3 out of 5. And then times 1 whole number, 3 out of 4, plus 8 whole number, divide by, over 5 whole number, 1 out of 6, times 1 whole number, 1 out of 5. So you can you realize that this is also more like the one I've done. Multiplication, addition, division, it is a combination of all mathematical symbols. And then we have the mixed fractions, we have actually every type of fraction. If you follow very well the procedures, then you'll be able to pass this. Try to break the fraction into simpler ways. If it is me, I will start with, let's say, the numerator, simplify it alone, denominator, and then come and join the two. So this is a trial question for you. I can also leave another one, but one is okay. I thank you very much for viewing. Keep on subscribing to our YouTube channel. I remain your teacher, Namilo Sauna. Stay safe. Keep in touch. More are coming. God bless you.